I'm Rachel Horgan. Join me each episode as I sit down with a guest co-host covering the latest business stories in the Seattle area. We'll read the news so you don't have to. This is The Weekly. Hey friends, hey pals. Spotify Wrapped came out, my favorite time of year. My top artist is Noah Kahan. I know everybody was wondering. It's so fun. And if it shows up on your Spotify, if The Weekly Seattle shows up, if you're listening to your podcast on Spotify, would love for if you post it and tag either me, Horgan18, and or the podcast, The Weekly Seattle. If you're curious, most people listen on Apple Podcasts. From the data, it's about 80 to 90% people listen on Apple Podcasts and about 20% listen on Spotify. So if you're one of those 20, give us a holler. The other thing is I just got back last night at like midnight from Raleigh, North Carolina. Some people know, I was contracting with a tech company. I worked on their user conference in November, and that was in Austin, Texas. And after that ended, they asked me to stay on for their internal sales conference in February in Raleigh for about 800 people. So we flew out there to do some meetings, walk the space at the convention center. And I learned what the Bible Belt is because I walked into my hotel room. There's 2 Bibles in there, and somebody's reading a very religious book on the plane. I was like, "Oh, we are not in Seattle. This is different." But
that we are not.
I know, right?
I went to school in North Carolina.
Oh, you did?
I did, Greensboro.
Oh,
so
it's really cute out there, but it's definitely a different vibe.
Different vibe.
It was very cold too. So yeah, that's my update. And the voice you're hearing is Elaina Morris, founding partner and president and CEO of Ascend Hospitality Group. How's it going?
It's going great, Rach. How are you?
Doing well. I haven't seen you in a while.
It has been a minute.
Like almost a year.
I know. And I'm really glad to see that we kept up with our twinning. Rachel and I can tend to, you can't see us, but she has her gray jacket. I have my gray jacket. But every time we see each other, we have some similar
every time. Because we've run into each other at like corporate events. And you're wearing a black jumpsuit. I'm wearing a black jumpsuit. It's cute.
I like the red and black when we both showed up. I know. That was great.
That was great.
But it is super good to see you. I am so grateful to be here. Thank you. And congratulations to you on your success and this amazing podcast. It's been great to listen to.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you were one of the earlier support. I don't think I had told you about this idea, but I sat down with you at an event one time and you were just gassing me up and being like, you can do it. You can do anything. Like, take the leap. And that was really important for me to hear at that time. So thank you.
Well, I'm glad you took, I used to love the wrap up, the business article wrap up on PSBJ. And I know that you were behind a lot of that. I don't have a ton of time. So, hitting the top 5 of like what's important in our region. So cool. So I love this for you and I love this for us.
Yay.
It's really cool.
So for the audience that don't know you, you've been president for about 8 years of Ascend, and that it represents Ascend Prime Steak and Sushi, which is where we're at right now, I should say. We're on the 31st floor.
We are.
And I'm overlooking Bellevue. It's a beautiful sunny day.
Today's gorgeous. You can see the Olympic mountain range and you can see the Cascade mountain range. And Big Beauty, we call her Mount Rainier, is out today too. So
it's lovely.
It's gorgeous.
So Ascend Hospitality Group represents Ascend Prime Steak and Sushi, where we're at, and also is the parent company of Stanford's. They have a couple different locations of that. Mm-hmm. She was the founder of WiggleWorks Kids, and before that had a history in the corporate world in global account management. So you went from the corporate world to the restaurant world.
Yeah, I went from the telecommunications world. I have an MBA in technology management, which a lot of people don't know.
I didn't know.
And I'm a call center engineer. Okay. And I went from that to creating an indoor kids playground to supporting, the restaurant industry and then becoming a restaurateur. So,
what a journey.
That's like the number one question I get is like, how did you do that? And there's no short answer.
I mean, while we're here, why go from tech to kids to restaurants?
I think most of us wake up and we want to be super inspired and excited about work, right? Work shouldn't feel like work if you do what you love. And at the time, I was burnt out. I mean, back in I don't want to date myself, but geez, it was 2006. And I was working over 100 hours for a big telecommunications company, running a huge, like 100-person global systems integration team. And I was exhausted. And I think I went from that to another job like that. And I just looked in the mirror and I couldn't have kids because of my schedule and what the body does when you're trying to have kids. And it's like, wait, where are we? Brussels? No. Are we in the UK? No. So I finally sat my butt at home. And when I finally did get pregnant, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going in the kids business, right? And because I think you get to thinking about all of the things that you could process improve or efficiencies or innovations for the time in your life that you're in, right? Look at you. You're an entrepreneur,
Well, you see the holes when you want it. Like the reason why I started this podcast is because I wanted it. I was becoming higher in my corporate companies, and this is something I was missing. And so for you have this kid and you're like, hey, we should have an indoor playground. And,
I couldn't agree more. And that is exactly what it was. When I moved back to Seattle, I was like, oh my gosh, there's nothing here for kids under 5. You had a lot of indoor playgrounds and really indoor discovery spaces, maker spaces for kids that were 5 to 12, but you didn't have anything for little kids. And play is super important in learning. It can also bring down the barriers. And that's what WiggleWorks Kids ended up being. It ended up being a safe space for the cultural immersion that Bellevue went through with all the tech families coming here from various countries. And no matter what, it's the same. Being a mom of a parent of 3-year-old and having a 1-year-old. That's a very equalizing. It can also be very isolating, particularly if English is not your first language. So it turned into that, and it turned into a mission. And it was exactly what I needed at the time for my 3-year-old or my 4-year-old, my 1-year-old. So, and
then you entered into We're going to talk a lot about restaurant world and hospitality.
I'm stoked.
So why are you passionate about kind of the restaurant world? What brought you?
Well, I think I've always been passionate about service. I think the one commonality that you'll see about me is I'm very dedicated to service-oriented businesses. So even when I was in tech or telecommunications and then went into systems integration in tech through WiggleWorks, through restaurants, I was always on the account management side, except for the engineering piece. There was always an engineer. There's always part of my brain that's very stimulated by the puzzle of things. But I love people. I actually have a sociology major. I double majored in sociology and international business. And I love just humans in general and why we do what we do. And I love making life easier because I think that I'm a good human, and I think I'm a good facilitator of things. I'm a good team builder, and I'm a good resource. I'm a very resourceful person. So I think that when you look at entrepreneurialism, you look at people and how they operate and why they do what they do, and then you know that your calling is to try and make things better than when you found it. It kind of all added up to service and serving our guests and our clients and our kids and our community. And if you just look at that thread through my career, it doesn't really matter what it is that I do, but I do that.
Yeah.
That's what makes me most happy.
I love it. Hospitality, you're so right. I was thinking about this. It's such behavioral science. And,
it is.
With events, we're thinking about where are the crowds going to be, where like the path that they walk, what's the best, route, and how many drinks are they going to drink? And
absolutely,
it's pretty predictable.
It's so funny. I always gave the one piece of advice, regardless if it was a tech team, of 15 and 16-year-olds who worked for me at WiggleWorks to, the restaurant business. And it is, in order to really, say that you are service oriented and lean into service and love hospitality, you have to be one of the most empathetic people in the world. You have to be able to put all your stuff aside and focus on the person that's about to walk through the door and say, what did they just go through? And how do I make sure that I don't make that worse, but make it better, right?
Well, and you have to make like their problem becomes your problem.
100%.
I was working a reg desk and somebody came up and were like, oh, I lost my phone. Easily I could be like, well, it's not in the lost and found, bye. Instead, I'm like grabbing my phone, logging in to like find my iPhone with their Apple ID. I'm like walking around, you have to kind of.
So we say you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
So
that's funny. One of my first job was front desk supervisor at a hotel, and the GM said hospitality is like a bug. Like you get it, like either you have it or you don't, kind of thing.
It either really excites you to make someone's day, or it doesn't.
Yeah,
and it's okay. I always say it's okay. You don't have to. You don't have to be on our team.
Yeah.
But if you don't love making someone's day, you can't be on our team. You know what I mean? And weren't you also a server? You did some...
I've been picking up shifts. This will come up later, I think. But I've been picking up shifts at Camp Social House over in, Madison Valley. Way back in the day when I was in high school, I worked at like a half service where you like just order at the counter. Yeah. But I've been doing some full service. And the one thing, I don't know if I've said this on air, but when I was a guest, a patron, I'm always like, God, hello? Like, how did they forget about me? Like, they haven't come back in forever.
Right.
And then I was a server and I was like, oh my God, I forgot about P3.
Table 11.
So I'm like, so easy to do.
No, I get it.
Okay, so I could geek out about hospitality obviously all day long.
All day.
But let's talk about our news stories today. So we've got Voodoo Donuts coming into Seattle. We've got a Seattle sushi restaurant that closed and reopened after a viral TikTok. Then we're going to talk about the implications of Seattle's minimum wage. We talked about this in another episode, but I think we're going to dive a lot deeper into this. And the last one is about Seattle's glass recycling and some issues going on there. So let's begin.
Let's do it.
Voodoo Donuts. I think many people here know about it, but it's a very special donut shop in Portland. And they're known for their eccentric flavors and these long lines. And it's just a big touristy thing. And it's coming into Seattle. What I didn't realize is that it operates in more than 20 locations across the country. So here I was thinking it's a special thing that you have to go to Portland for. It's going to be opening up in Capitol Hill on December 10th, so just next week, or I guess if you're listening to this pretty much now. It'll be open 24 hours a day. And what I liked about it is that they're doing 20% of the proceeds on opening day is going to go to Fair Start, which is a local culinary nonprofit. I think it shows them really trying to get into the Seattle community and support it. What else to say about this?
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's kind of it for me. So I guess for you...
I'm stoked.
Yeah. How do you feel about it? But also specifically, how do you feel about iconic touristy attractions franchising? Because we're seeing that with like Raising Cane's, In-N-Out. Like you used to have to go to Southern California for that. Now you can go anywhere. Dutch Bros, I think that happened. So how do you feel about kind of those iconic places opening up other places?
Okay. Well, first I'm going to start off by saying, I'm super excited about Voodoo Donuts. I'm not a huge donut person, but my kids are. And so they're very excited. There's my husband is from Portland, and they got introduced recently to Voodoo Donuts. And so now they're very excited. We don't have to make the trip to Portland.
Yep.
So welcome is what I want to say to the Voodoo Donuts team.
Okay.
It reminds me a lot of, I think they're going to experience what Molly Moon's and also Hello Robin went through. If you look at that category of, dessert food, Top Pot is kind of another one that I think you've got these cult following. So it's not just about iconic brands and having to go somewhere to get them or what their business model is in expansion. It's more how to keep what's special about them special. And if you see these iconic brands multiplying and they're doing it well, they figured it out. So when I look at iconic brands, In-N-Out is a great one. I have 40 pounds that loved In-N-Out when I got pregnant with my daughter. I lived in San Francisco at the time, and it was like right off the exit. Yeah. So I can really relate to In-N-Out. They're very, very, what's the word? Intentional. And so I think when you look at, it doesn't really matter. Dick's is another one, right? So you can look at all these iconic brands, and what I can say is that the ones that actually get it right are the ones that stick to their core values. They don't listen to the noise. Like, we love our guests, but I will tell you, if somebody comes up here and is like, hey, I want a California roll at Ascend Prime, I'm going to say, that's not what we do here, right?
I feel called out.
I love Rachel, but we are not going to do California rolls for you. So if you talk to some of these CEOs, like I know Jim Eschweiler really well. He's the CEO of Top Pot, former CEO of RUI. I know the CEO of Dick's, et cetera. I know Molly. You talk to them, they are vigilant about keeping intact what makes them who they are, and they do not deviate. And I think that there is no reason to be apologetic, and they are unapologetic about it.
I love that.
I think when you can do that and be very, very intentional about what it is you do, you will do it well. I'd like to see Voodoo Donuts stay weird. Keep it funky, people. Like, don't come up in here and try and do a salmon donut.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Yeah.
However, if you want to do, keep what they do.
Yeah.
And that is going to be the key to their success. I more worry with iconic locations choosing the wrong location. That's what I worry about, because you can have the key to restaurants, eateries, fast casual, fine dining, QSR, quick serve for those who don't know the acronym. It's really important. Location is everything.
Well, let's talk about that because you have this location in Bellevue and then Stanford's. Do you oversee the one in Northgate?
Yeah, so we have
Northgate,
Stanford's, and then we have two Stanford's, one in Clackamas, Oregon, and one in Hillsboro, Oregon, Tanasbourne. And then we had to close Jansen Beach, unfortunately, due to crime. That's another one where it's an iconic brand. Stanford's is an iconic brand in the Pacific Northwest. Wrong locations. When the rivers flow away from a particular trade zone, you got to be really, really careful. Very careful, particularly in cities that, may not have the resources of other cities as well.
And so Stanford's is going well, and you were recently overseeing Famous Dave's.
Yeah, so we were a franchisee, and we currently still are a franchisee technically of Famous Dave's. But when I acquired Famous Dave's, the Famous Dave's franchise here in the Northwest, and I have Washington and Utah, we had 7. And unfortunately, the evolution of that brand, it didn't keep up with what was happening in the world. So as you saw other brands lean into how to become more efficient, respond to the yo-yo of food costs, so many things affect food businesses at the very basic level. So, when cattle prices go up, it's because typically labor goes up or feed prices go up. And when those commodity items go up and your business is based on protein, so it could be, I'm sure you remember the chicken shortage and then the chicken wing shortage. And then, there was a beef escalation and then there was a trucking problem. All of those types of things affect the supply chain of food, whether it be in restaurants or in grocery. And if we can't fix the foundation, you just see businesses that become out of pace with what it is that consumers need and want. So you can have a protein-based business, but you better have other things that you can serve in order to get you through when one lowers and is more accessible, then, okay, I don't care if I can't serve beef. I'll just serve more chicken.
Sure.
Right? Like you have to be able to do that. You can't see me right now, but I'm doing the scales of justice.
So do you feel like that's what happened with Famous Dave's?
I do. I feel like that's what happened with Famous Dave's because there wasn't anything else to lean into. People do not go to Famous Dave's to get a black bean burger. They're not going to get a quinoa bowl, right? They're going to get ribs, chicken, chicken fingers, chicken wings, and, the rib tips, right? This is, excuse me, and the cornbread muffins. Now, but that's not a meal. Maybe it is for you. It is also for me. So it just became an issue of how do you respond to that and keep your business relevant? It's very difficult. And that's why, I think, for us, it became really difficult. We are in the business of owning and creating our own brands, which we don't pay a royalty for, and then also being a franchisee. And for us, with rising labor costs and which we'll talk about later here in the program, and increased real estate costs and some really unfortunate business legislation in certain areas where I own Famous Dave's, we just couldn't make it work. So we elected to get out of the brand, and we have one location left in Utah, which we'll probably repurpose to likely a Stanford's. Yeah. So it was a business decision, but it really was saying, where do we see the future going? And this isn't it. And that is why. Yeah.
Breaking news, everybody. As of yesterday, right?
News. Unfortunately, and this franchise is 36 years old. or this brand, Famous Dave's, is 36 years old. For those wondering, there is a Famous Dave. His name is Dave Anderson.
Oh.
He's actually a dear friend. You can follow me on Facebook and you'll see he comments frequently on my stuff. He's wonderful.
That's awesome.
I worked for 2 years in Minneapolis and spent many sleepless nights up with him talking about, how to take the cornbread cap and make chicken pot pie, right? I mean, he was thinking a long time ago, like, if we don't figure this out, we have to migrate or we're not going to make it. So, for us, you're going to see us move where the waters are flowing, and not trying to continue to preserve something that, honestly, the ship sailed.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks for sharing that. I think it's really interesting to kind of hear the behind the scenes of.
But we love our Tacoma and Tacoma restaurants and our famous fans, as we call them, and our famous team, and we'll certainly miss them. But it's a rough environment right now.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to our next article, which is a little bit about social media. So if you're on TikTok, if you're chronically online like I am, you saw this TikToker with millions of followers. He posted a video of him eating sushi from. Is it FOB Sushi Bar or FOB?
FOB.
FOB, okay. Yeah. FOB Sushi Bar here in Seattle. And the video, it looked like it was, there was a worm in it, but the restaurant was like, no, it's just like the, what is it called? Elasticity of the
It's
fish.
how he was holding the chopsticks.
Oh, okay.
Is what the claim was.
I see.
Yes.
Okay. So there's some debate about what it actually is. But when you put something on TikTok, he has millions of followers, and people were up in arms about this. So much so that the restaurant had to shut down and have, the food board come in and look at.
Yeah. So the health inspector came in.
Yes.
And so I want to say that they voluntarily closed.
Yes.
I do want to make that really, really clear to people, which I really appreciate. I think it was an excellent decision.
From a PR perspective, it's smart.
Yeah, it was good for every reason. I think it demonstrated their care and concern for all of their guests in both their locations here. It also demonstrated their commitment to not passing the buck and saying, if there's something wrong, we are going to be the ones to figure it out. And they invited the health department in really the next day.
Yeah, it's so smart. And then, so the article that came out is basically saying they reopened. So they shut down, had this inspection, they reopened. So I want to talk about the impact of social media and especially influencers in the restaurant world, because I think before, you'd have these celebrities, you wanted Brad Pitt to be eating at your restaurant, and now you want an influencer to be here who many people may not know, but they have a lot of followers. And I think some restaurants are paying influencers to come in, which is, great. There's the good side of that, but then there's a downside, as we're seeing with FOB Sushi Bar. So what's been your experience with social media?
This is so much to unpack. So I'm going to try and keep it brief. So we have multiple types of businesses, right? And our policy on social, really our approach to social media, really, it doesn't matter if it's our fine dining restaurant here to Sun Prime Steak and Sushi, our casual dining restaurants that we had, or when we ran fast casual restaurants. We utilize social media as just one of the cars on the media highway, right? And we utilize it for something very specific, and that is to help folks understand the experience they're going to have. So it's an experiential marketing tool for us. It helps us tell lots of stories that aren't about advertising. So if you look at what we utilize it for, it's really engagement with different pieces of our brand that will help a guest understand how they're going to feel when they get here, what they're going to experience when they get here. Is it going to be cool? What do they wear? We get that a lot here at Sun Prime, right? We also get to tell stories. Our director of marketing PR is so wonderful. Erin, she's so fantastic. And she has utilized social media to help tell the stories of the people behind delivering the food on your table, on your plate, right? And that, for me, has been one of the best uses of social media possible, because it allows us to get people sort of behind the scenes,
Totally.
And that's freaking cool.
Authenticity too.
Absolutely. People want that. It also helps tell the story of the thought process behind what it is we do and why we do it. And it's not just here at Sun Prime. Their accomplishments, right? Yeah. A lot of people don't know this, but all of my GMs at Stanford are women. And so National Women's Day and all of that, we do a lot of celebrating, and we utilize it as a platform to tell our story about how we engage with the community. And we have launched a philanthropic arm of our company called AHD Cares, where we just we show up however it is most authentic for us to show up in the communities that we serve. And so that's how we utilize social media. We don't pay social media influencers.
You don't?
We don't.
I'm surprised by that.
We don't.
Do you invite them in? Like, hey,
sometimes we do trade. Sometimes we do trade, and that is for the purposes of them bringing, we want to open our doors, and we will typically invite them in if we have something new to say. So we have, have you been to one of our media dinners?
Not yet.
Okay. You got to get Aaron, if you're listening. Rachel must come to a media dinner. So we typically will, every time we launch a new menu, we'll have, a media day, especially if we have something interesting to talk about, right? Yeah. So that's really cool. And then we will utilize bits and pieces of that, particularly behind the scenes of how we prepared this, why chefs selected certain things, or if it's in our casual dining restaurants, what did we bring back? Like, we've recently brought back the burger that was first served at Stanford. It's called the Cruise Burger.
Oh, fun.
It was the most successful thing we've ever done.
Yeah, that's so smart. People love a little vintage throwback moment.
Right? So sometimes we'll do that, and that's mainstream media. And then other times with social media, we will allow, but we don't host parties for social media influencers. We'll invite certain those that we trust, and we develop relationships with them. We're not like, hey, let's call the person that has, like, the guy who showed up at FOB. I mean, he's not going to be somebody we reach out to say, hey, come check us out. Mm-hmm. We make sure that we have good relationships with people. We understand what they're trying to accomplish. If they come, we're ready. Yeah. I mean, we have nothing, none of us have anything to hide.
Sure.
I think there's a responsibility on the part of any media. Mainstream media seems to be a lot more responsible, because I think you guys all understand, like, the diligence behind checking your sources and making sure we're publishing factual information and all of that kind of stuff. But I also think you guys really understand, at least, all my friends, I have lots of friends in the media, including you, who have a real responsibility and take it very seriously, the impact one word can have out of your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
That's something I think is a lesson for social media. They just don't consider themselves media, and they are.
Right, because he posted one video and it impacted, thousands of dollars for this.
Disaster.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that experience. We're going to move on to our juicy topic.
Ooh, it's so juicy. Oh, God.
Okay. Minimum. She throws her notes away.
She's like, I don't need notes. I'm just not even going to look at my notes anymore.
Okay, so Seattle's minimum wage, I talked about this. Starting January 1st, and you can correct me because you know this more intimately than I do.
No worries.
But right now, the minimum wage for people that are working in a tipped environment, so typically like restaurants, the minimum wage is about $17, $17.25. Starting January 1st, everyone, no matter whether you're in a tipped working place or working in retail, everyone's minimum wage is going to be $20.76, so about $20. This is, a pretty big jump for restaurants in particular. Okay, so when we talked about this, we had Chad McKay, the president of Firevine Hospitality.
Very good friend of mine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love him. He's nice. Basically, this is going to put a lot of strain on restaurants, because now they have to pay from their sales, their revenue, to these servers. I also, as I said, I worked as a server, and some of these people in the article in Seattle Times, let me tell you, you're making more than $20 an hour, because with the gratuity, some of them said they were making $30 to $40 an hour. Some were saying $50 to $60.
That's right.
You can, and I'm sure even higher here at a high-end restaurant. So when you increase the minimum wage, what you're doing is just taking more out of the bottom line of the restaurant, and you're not really solving the problem for the servers, because the guests, I keep wanting to say attendees, the guests, maybe aren't going to tip as much when their prices go up. If a burger's too expensive, they're not going to tip as much.
A lot of unintended consequences.
Maybe people in Seattle see that everyone's getting a $3 or more raise, and they're not going to want to tip as much. Or let's say they do tip the exact same amount, then the servers are just making more, and now the restaurant's suffering. And some of the adjustments the restaurants have to make is like, maybe they shut down for lunch because they have to afford all of this. Anyway, I'm going all over the place, but I'm just like, this doesn't seem this hard.
It's mind-boggling, yeah.
Like, why is this hard? Is this a hard concept to understand? Because I think people are like, it's the owners versus the workers, and give the workers more money. I'm like, they have the money, right? Okay, tell me.
I know. Here's the good news. I'm going to give you a Christmas gift today.
Okay.
This is not that hard.
That's okay, but that's what, okay. Thank you. Validating.
It is very validating. And I say that not to be, patronizing or also to negate the work of both sides of this argument. People are very passionate about it. It's very difficult to talk about when you're the owner of a restaurant. And when at one point, at our highest point, I had 14 restaurants and 700 employees in 4 states. I can tell you that the states, let's just talk about the facts. Let's back. I'm doing the backup. Like, beep. I'm going to back up a minute. The reason it's not that hard is because the argument, we're focusing on the wrong thing. Okay. So if you just go with the fact that both sides, I'd love for both sides of this argument to go to a resort together and maybe eat some Voodoo Donuts and talk logically about what the actual problem is. It doesn't matter what part of life you're in or whether you're talking about work or not. If you're not solving for the right problem,
what are we solving for?
You are down the wrong road. And that is my personal opinion. We are down the wrong road. Anytime you try and solve a social justice or it's a social issue, what people make, people's wage. That is an economic issue, but it is a social issue. What do people deserve? Who in the hell's right is it to tell somebody what servers deserve to make or not? Are we a free capital society? We are. It's a free market economy. Who is anyone to tell me as a business owner what I am allowed or what they feel is right for me to make in profit or not? This is the totally wrong discussion. What is the right discussion is, why is the damn city so expensive? Okay? Why is it so hard for people who work a minimum wage job? I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't matter if someone makes $15 an hour or $25 an hour. That swing is not going to change their life. Because the minute you start to increase minimum wage, proven. I have restaurants in states that have minimum wage tip credits, that have a low minimum wage, and then have high minimum wage. In the states that have high minimum wage, you have 5 major unintended consequences. Restaurants close. Period. That's factual information. Okay? I am actually consolidating a bunch of data right now for both sides of this argument, really at the legislative level, for the Washington Hospitality Association, to talk about what the cause and effect is utilizing my P&L. Like, I'm being very brave, and I'm going to give them a worksheet that they can utilize to start to play with these numbers. So restaurants will close. They will cross-train employees, and so there will be less jobs.
Meaning, like, bartenders will be your hostess now.
Correct.
Kind of thing.
Correct. You will then also have owners who say, screw this, I'm going to go work in my business. They didn't before. They will now. And so therefore,
an owner becomes a server. And
correct.
Yeah.
Right. So again, less jobs. You will have price increases like crazy.
The Seattle Times article mentioned at least 3 or 4 different restaurants and owners saying we will be increasing our rates.
Absolutely.
They have to. Yeah.
So whenever you try and use a business to solve a problem that actually wasn't created by the business, so a social issue, this is not going to get resolved because we're trying to solve the wrong problem. Right. So that is what is going to happen. And yes, people will respond by not tipping as much. And they will not go as frequently if prices are increased.
Right.
We've already seen it. That's part of the reason why we closed our Famous Dave's in Tacoma, Tequila. I mean, on top of all of this, which is nobody is mentioning, there's a state minimum. First of all, there's federal minimum wage. Then there's a state minimum wage. A lot of people don't know, but there's also a city minimum wage. So if we have Northgate and Tacoma and Tequila all have different minimum wages. Do you know how hard it is to manage business like that?
It'd be hard, yeah.
Very, very difficult. How am I supposed to set my pricing? What am I supposed to, all of a sudden now my economies of scale of buying they don't matter. Yeah. Right? It's really difficult. So by just doing this one thing to benefit one group of people, which are minimum wage employees, you have created 6,000 other problems. I mean, I'm serious. Like, no, I agree. Everything from real estate. So you're going to see businesses go, you're going to see restaurants go out. Guess who that creates a problem for? The landlords.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Most of these restaurants are single asset entities. And that means they'll file bankruptcy. And you know what the landlord gets? $0. Huge issue. So then you've got vacancy. Where there's vacancy, there's crime. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
So then now you have a crime issue, a homelessness issue that starts to creep into these parts of town. It is so frightening. So what I have been on the quest of is, how do we solve for this? Well, you have to have people who are willing to go have the actual conversation about where the problem lies.
Right.
I think it's going to take economists. I think it's going to take social justice folks. I think it's going to take moderate politicians. You cannot have anybody who's too far on one side or the other of this discussion.
Yeah.
You have to have people who represent workers and people who represent, restaurateurs to get to the right answer. But I don't even know if restaurateurs need to be involved in this discussion. We focus on restaurants when we talk about minimum wage because they're tipped employees. There's no other minimum wage worker that is tipped like this.
Right.
Really none. It's the service industry. Well, the service industry actually does make fair amounts of money. Now, the problem is one of the root causes of the situation, other than why is everything so expensive in the city, which is a question that needs to be answered by, our friends at City Hall, economic development, mayors, governors, et cetera, the politicians and the legislators. You have another problem, which is you have this issue of getting the discussion to the point where you are saying, I've got a solution for the employees, but what the hell is my solution for the employers? We want people to create jobs. Yeah. One of the biggest, most prides of my life is the fact that I'm a job creator. I'm so proud of that, but it's becoming impossible here. Yeah. So I think if we start to get into this programmatic solution to minimum wage, then the only thing that's going to solve it is if you roll out a benefit for an employee, then you have to roll out a benefit for the employer.
Sure, but my other thing is is it even a benefit for the employee? Because now, like I said, you're shut down for lunch, or like you said, the bartender's not the hostess.
Well, if we were to get a tip credit, then...
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying if this $20 an hour thing, it's seen
but if
as
the city of Seattle would give me a tip credit.
Oh, I see what you mean. And paying you.
I don't even know why. If you're going to increase minimum wage, you got to give a tip credit to the businesses, and then all of a sudden, guess what?
Then we're fine.
It's kind of it is one of the only solutions that can actually benefits both sides of the house.
Yeah, I see what you
and
mean.
Guess what? Nobody is thinking about. So if all of a sudden you're improving the quality of life for a minimum wage worker, that, by the way, now has the pro argument of this is our minimum wage employees can now go have one job instead of two, instead of three. That's untrue, by the way. That's just a fallacy.
Why do you say that?
Because they make double the money.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
That's what I was going to say. Is we keep saying minimum wage worker. It's not, it's not when they're making 30, 40, 50 an hour.
Yeah. So, if you want to talk about the poverty line, it's not. But what does it take to really live in the city? It's a different discussion. So what is going to happen is if you have restaurants that are low cost but high volume, they're going to be okay.
Okay.
If you have restaurants that are high volume, high cost, they're going to be okay. But where the rubber is going to hit the road is if you have a median volume or kind of low volume, these little cultural restaurant jewels in places like Capitol Hill, what's going to happen is they're not going to make it because they cannot survive. They don't have enough volume to offset this expense, and they're not going to be able, there's no credit, there's no tax credit for them. There's nothing on that side. And guess what's happening to them every single year? Their costs go up more than inflation. So their food costs have gone up more than inflation. They're probably on a 10-year-old restaurant lease that every year the annual, base rent goes up more than inflation. Wow. So it's a decelerating situation. And then guess what? Affordable restaurants go out of business. And who needs affordable restaurants the most?
People that are working minimum wage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's why I don't think this whole issue is being talked about holistically. Yeah. I think we're solving the wrong problem. And I think we're trying to do it on the backs of the restaurant owners as well as the restaurant workers who absolutely are going to lose more jobs. I just laid off 50 people.
Yeah.
because I cannot afford to make it work in Tacoma or Tooele. I cannot afford it. So I think this is the issue. So what needs to get talked about is how to make cities more affordable to live in.
The one last tiny part I wanted to add on to that is the other ramification is that let's say you're a restaurant already paying $20 an hour and you're set apart from these other people paying $17, and now everyone's at 20. So now what do? Now you have to go to 23. So I think there's that other part that I didn't really think about.
You have to do what we did. So that actually happened to us. We actually always have paid a little bit more than minimum wage, so especially
even
here.
If you're already paying that amount, you're also having to pay more.
Yeah. So what I did, and this is what some very savvy restaurateurs do as well, is you look at other things that I actually did a survey of my entire restaurant organization to find out what benefits would be the most impactful for them in their life. And it was things like reducing the minimum number of hours to qualify for the base level of healthcare.
Yes, healthcare.
So it's stuff like that. So like you don't have to work here 30 hours a week to qualify for healthcare. You don't even have to work here 25. It's 23.
Wow.
So that cost me a little bit, but it didn't cost me as much as then turning around and trying to keep up with the Joneses on the minimum wage situation.
Right. That's another thing is like now people, if they could maybe afford health insurance for their people, but now they can't. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
we have to move on.
It's rough. It's rough. I know it's a rough one, but I would say my advice to restaurateurs and anybody who owns a business who is being affected by this, be a good employer. Yeah. By just expressing how much you care for your people and try and solve the issue other ways than just minimum wage.
Yeah.
That's the best thing to do right now. And if there's anything I can do, it will be to fight at the Hospitality Association level and in the legislature, which I've been asked to do, to represent hospitality, to help everybody understand the multi sides of this issue to see if we can come to some sort of resolution so they can actually use a real set of financial data to play with numbers to see what happens when you increase minimum wage. And nobody has ever exposed, like when I found out the legislature didn't have any information about our costs as a business. They really don't have real data.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, Kimono's opening. We're going to give you the information and hopefully can have an impact on this.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that.
That's my goal.
That. I'm glad that you're on the team. And
I'm on it.
A fearless leader.
Let's
fighting the fight.
Let's hope so.
We ride at dawn.
Or I'll die trying, and we're riding at dawn.
Okay. All right. We're going to do our last article. We'll make this one a little quick. But there's a company called the title of this article is basically about Seattle's glass. You got me all riled up.
I know. Rachel is off her game right now. Excuse her. She needs to take a sip of her LaCroix.
Okay.
Fired up.
Seattle's glass recycling. You may have heard a little bit in the background because this is a working restaurant here.
Yes.
But Ardagh Glass Packaging Plant in Georgetown. So they used to take all the glass, all the wine bottles that we recycle, they would take them and they would repurpose them and they would sell new wine bottles to places like Chateau Ste. Michelle or what have you for their wine. But this company closed down due to cheaper imported competition. So other people in Chateau's now buying it from somewhere else that's cheaper. So this company shuts down and now we have nowhere to put our recycled glass.
Yeah, it's being crushed and piled up in Soto.
So like Tacoma's sending it to a landfill. Pierce County's taking it to a Portland place. Skagit County's just like, F it, throw it in the trash. We can't help you. All because of this one company, which I find shocking. Seattle Public Utilities still wants residents to put in the recycling bin because they think that somebody else is going to take over and buy this company. So initial thoughts on this?
This is a rough one. Primarily because it's just not about recycling. I mean, it's about food waste and, how we handle secondhand. We figured it out with clothes. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think actually popping tags and going to Goodwill is actually cool now, which is costing me less as a parent. Thank you.
Yes.
But listen, Seattle, I think you've got a couple of problems with this company. Well, let's back up. Anytime you're a municipal provider of services to a city and you have a one-stop shop that is providing a critical service for the city. The first problem here was that there wasn't a secondary solution.
Yeah, so we should not be relying on
we should
one
not
company
be here right now. So I call on the environmental services teams and the municipal leaders to have that discussion. That's a real nightmare. And frankly, I would like to see at the city level, I would like to see residents asking that question to their leaders because it's kind of nonsensical. There are so many companies throughout the world that handle things like when we send, you throw away you have your AirPod, or your earbuds in, right? When we throw cords away, they strip the cords and Christmas lights. I mean, the amount of second gen, I'll call it, product recycling, or adaptive reuse, I think is like the buzzword.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Adaptive reuse. There are a lot of people in this space that are thought leaders about how to take a material that was used for one thing and use it for something different. Like you see a lot of products now in the adaptive reuse or tires. It's really amazing. I call on the innovators in our city to figure this out. This can be figured out. We need an adaptive reuse solution, and we have lots of freaking smart people here in Seattle. I'm in YPO Seattle, and Young Professionals Organization. I have sent this note out to our YPO team to say, hey, if anybody's, these guys are thinking about how to get more power to increase the power grid and charging stations right now, right? Okay. They're thinking about 5 years down the road, what happens when there's all these batteries that are around. These are the people that are really trying to solve for the problems we're creating today. But we need people like this to think about this solution. So, when they come up with that would be fantastic, but there's not much that can be done. Yeah. I'd love you to interview some of the folks from, like Waste Management and Recology and those companies to find out how they're actually handling this, because they're the ones that take it from us and now they have to find something to do with it. Now, a lot of these folks, these big businesses that are environmental services have transfer stations and different landfills, and they will be responsible for then finding buyers. So it's not just the city that finds a buyer for the glass, right? It's a lot of times Recology, right? They just lost their buyer. So we have to get innovative on first find a buyer, and then second of all, adaptive reuse. I mean, I feel like there could be, aren't we the city of glass? Did we just come up with a new bit? Rachel and I, you heard it here first.
Welcome to Seattle, the city of glass.
The city of glass. They might need to build, why wouldn't we just take all this glass and make windows? I don't know.
Again, it seems easy. Like
it's so easy.
I don't know. I feel like you could reuse glass or something. Doesn't it make sand or some shit?
It is something like that. But I feel like there's a secondary buyer for this.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then let's just tap into our creative minds in Seattle and figure this out. Maybe not rely on one company.
Seems easy. It's not.
I know it's not. I'm kidding. But yes.
Is Dale Chihuly? Could we call him and see what he can do?
Dale, do you want? We have some extra glass here.
Could you make something cool? We got the Bellevue Art Museum. Need some help.
That'd be so good. All right, Elaina, we're gonna wrap up here. So the last question. We're coming up on the end of the year here. We have a couple more episodes, but as we come to the end of the year, do you have any kind of reflections or advice for anybody? Kind of as you look back.
Yeah, be kind.
Yeah,
be kind. Be patient. Be kind and patient to yourself.
That's simple and useful.
Yeah. It's, you hear, I think we hear a lot about people going through rough times, mostly at the holidays, because it just taps into people's emotions. But, I am currently facing a situation with my mom where, she's not long for the world and she's been ill for a very long time. But one of the things that I admire most about her is her fight in her. And she wants to have a lot of fun before she goes. And she's kind of going out on her own terms. Life is precious and life is short. And I would say anytime you can be kind and be gentle, and particularly to yourself, it's wonderful. But the better you feel, the better you can make others feel. And I think that's what at least I know I'm in the business of every day. And I want others to do that, because making someone else's day, actually, they've done scientific studies on it. It makes the dopamine in your body increases tremendously. Wow. It makes you feel better. Just in general, like, hey, I made that person's day. So
yeah, and you're so good at it. I feel great every time I see you, and I've hosted a couple events here. That's kind of how we met, and it really made a mark, and it shows, and you and your staff. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Well, you are a joy to work with, and thanks. I loved being here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Thanks for hosting.
Thanks.
This has been The Weekly, with production assistance from Nick Patry. If you liked what you heard, rate us and write a review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We love listener feedback, so if you have any story suggestions, comments, or complaints, email us at info@emcee.org. theweeklyseattle.com. Make sure to check back next Sunday for the latest local business news. We'll see you next time.